Welcome back to Piers Morgan Uncensored. Well, Kari Lake spent 22 years as a news anchor in Arizona. She's now gone to the dark side of politics. And she's a rising star in the Republican Party, arguably one of its more controversial figures. Lake has been repeatedly touted as a potential running mate for Donald Trump, a claim she emphatically denies, so it may be true. But she has hinted at a run for the Senate. Well, this weekend, she happened to be in London to witness history with the coronation of King Charles. And to my delight, you've agreed to come in to my lair and meet me face to face. So, Kari Lake, lovely to meet you.
It's so good to be here. It's wonderful to be in London. We were here for quite a bit of history with the coronation. And
what did you make of it?
I thought it was amazing. You know, I'm all for countries making sure that they maintain their culture. And that is such a huge part of British culture. It was wonderful. It was so, the people of London are tough. That rain coming from the desert of Arizona, I was kind of like, do we want to stand in the rain any longer? And then I decided, you know what, for history, it's worth it.
That was like a summer's day for us. That's what you were moaning about. But it was an amazing event. How do you feel about a monarchy? Because I think a lot of Americans, it's interesting. Obviously, you drove us out. You drove King George III out. And that's how you gained independence as a country. Obviously, I think that was a terrible strategic error by the Americans, but you did. What do you feel about the idea of a monarchy? There's a whole debate raging in this country. Some people believe it's kind of had its time.
Well, I think the culture of England is amazing, and I'm all for 190 different countries in the world maintaining their culture, and it's a really beautiful part of the culture of England. It's not something we're for. Obviously, 200 and roughly 40 plus years ago, we threw off the shackles of the monarchy in a revolution and maintained and secured our freedom. So it's not for us, but I love the culture. I love going to other countries and experiencing their culture. And it's truly remarkable what you have here in England. And, this hasn't happened for, 70 years?
Yeah. I mean, that's the extraordinary...
You weren't alive, I don't
No,
believe.
Thank you. You don't believe. Obviously, I was nowhere near old enough to have been there. No, but I mean, I'm 58, and the last coronation happened 12 years before I was born.
Yes, it's
pretty
history.
Extraordinary to have gone through my entire life with one monarch.
Yes, and I think it's really amazing that, it all goes back to God. I mean, there's just a vein of God and Christianity that kind of runs through this as well. And I thought it was beautiful. I think the pomp and circumstance was beautiful. Again, it's not for us. We're not part of the monarchy.
Didn't give you little itchy feet to get the royals back back in charge?
But I did find it wonderful. I found the people have been incredibly polite and charming. And I'm enjoying my stay in London. My sister actually lives here, so it was wonderful to visit with her a bit as well.
Now, I want to talk to you. We've just talked about a rather, to what many Americans think, an anachronistic part of our culture. So let me talk about what we in Britain would see as an anachronistic part of your culture, and that's guns. Now, I'm not going to start lecturing you about guns. It's your country, your laws, your culture. I get all that. But there was another mass shooting this week, and it comes off the back of endless mass shootings, more this year already than any other recorded year, nearly 200, I think, now. And the sort of scale and volume of these mass shootings seems to be getting worse and worse. What is the answer? I mean, what do you think can be done? Because 1 million new guns are sold every month. So the volume of guns in circulation exponentially increases. The power of them seems to be getting bigger. Young people seem to be suffering, in particular, a lot of mental health issues. And it's turning into this awful Groundhog Day cocktail of people apparently going mad and committing heinous mass shootings. What do you think the answer is?
Kind of here we are again, right?
Right.
And I know you're a father and I'm a mother, and it's painful to see any loss of life, especially, you never expect your children to die before you do. And in some of these shootings, we've had children dying and adults dying. And we just had a car run down a bunch of people recently as well. We're not banning cars or attempting to ban cars.
You're regulating cars. Often,
we're regulating them from driving through crowds.
Well, no, but it's a very interesting piece by Nick Kristof in the New York Times a few years ago, comparing what happened actually with car regulation and comparing it to gun regulation. That cars used to kill a lot of people in America, going back 100 years when they first came along. And they brought in a series of regulations from wearing seat belts to having to have insurance to having to be registered for
But
them.
that doesn't, Piers, that doesn't stop someone driving a car into
No, but here's my point. My point was that his point was, in this very interesting column, was that there were a series of regulations were brought in, and the combined effect was that the mortality rate from car deaths decreased.
But we're talking about separate things.
I know, but hang on. But you raise cars, they decreased by 95%. And it was a very interesting piece, which is, why don't you just regulate guns like you did cars?
There are millions, tens of millions of gun owners in America who wouldn't dream of doing a mass shooting. They're legal, they own their guns legally, and we have a Second Amendment. It's a God-given right. It's in our Constitution.
Do you think the founding fathers, though, would they have been comfortable, Kari? Would the founding fathers have been comfortable watching this absolutely never-ending series of mass shootings? Would they have thought that was what they meant by the Second Amendment? Or would they have looked to perhaps to tailor it to modern times?
The founding fathers would have never been okay with what they're seeing right now, which is tyranny on our land once again. And the Second Amendment was put in place. We already pushed back the tyrants once, and we didn't give up. We clung to our guns.
Who's the tyranny from?
The tyranny was from the monarchy.
No, but now.
Back. And now we're seeing an overreaching government. We're seeing a lying media, lying to us, taking our livelihoods away with COVID restrictions and imposing all of that on our children and on our families and on our education. And we don't want to have to throw back the tyrants again, but they put that in place to prevent us from having to do that, to protect us. I will tell you this as a mother, I'm horrified to see anybody hurt, but I don't know, you haven't been on the streets of America lately.
Oh, I have. Yeah.
The crime is out of control.
I've seen it.
It's not safe to walk down these Democrat-controlled cities.
By the way, I'm not making...
No. The murder, you can be raped and murdered on the subway.
I am not, by the way, I'm not making...
I'll tell you what, let me
on that point.
My thought.
Okay.
I am a much better mother that I have firearms and can protect my family. And I will protect my family. You call 911 right now, you can't get someone to show up at your house, Piers. And there's crime and violence happening on our streets, and we need to protect our own families.
Okay, but here's my question for you. I don't dispute anything you've just said. What I would say is this. Something has to be done. We can agree on this, right? A Fox News poll revealed that 87% of Americans back stricter background checks. 81% agreed the legal age to buy a gun should be raised to 21. 80% agreed that anyone who buys a gun should go for a mental health assessment. 80% want police to take guns from people considered a danger to themselves. 77% want a 30-day waiting off period for all gun purchases.
Okay, that doesn't surprise me because this is
would you support those?
Fox News is a globalist network pushing a globalist agenda, and the globalists want to make sure...
Fox News is watched by a lot of gun owners.
Fox News is a globalist network run by globalists who want to bring down our Constitution and take away our Second
Amendment. So everybody who took part in that independent poll is a globalist.
No, but Fox News is a globalist network. Let's just face it. We all know the truth here.
I don't think Fox News is a globalist network.
It doesn't matter.
It's the biggest conservative network in the country.
Well, they fired Tucker Carlson.
Most of it. Well, I don't want to get into that. I don't want to get into that. But most of its viewers, I suspect, would have a pro-gun view. And yet 80% of them want all these new measures brought in. Would you not agree with any of them?
If you pass any of those and make those laws, they're unconstitutional. We have a constitution.
So you wouldn't bring in anything?
The Constitution is not going anywhere.
I understand that. Would you not bring in any new regulations?
No. I'm not going to change the Second Amendment, our constitutional rights, just like I don't change the First Amendment.
You don't even want background checks?
I don't want to change our Constitution.
Kari, not even background checks?
Piers,
87% of Americans want background checks.
Us. Our Second Amendment allows me to protect my family. It allows me to protect my children. And right now, we're living in a very dangerous place. I'm sure the streets of London aren't safe either, but the streets of America, you go to Portland, you go to San Francisco, LA, Phoenix, and you wouldn't dare walk down a street at night, even in the middle of broad daylight, and feel safe. You're not safe in the streets.
Look at this. You see what these are? Do you know what they are?
What is it?
Kinder Surprise chocolate egg. So the thing about the surprises, there are little toys inside the chocolate eggs. I've got 2 of them here. These are legal here, that's why I'm allowed to use them. And they were very popular in America, and then they got banned. They're illegal in America because the CDC decided that the toys inside, because they were buried inside the chocolate, or a choking hazard.
Guess what? The CDC also is the one who forced masks on our children's faces.
Right, but here's my point.
Pierce, the CDC forced masks
Here's
on
my
our
point,
children's
Kari.
faces for 2 years.
I know. You wanted me
for
to.
2 years.
You wanted me to answer the
I don't
question.
care what the CDC says. They do not control
Let me ask
our
you.
Second Amendment.
Let me ask you. Do you think they should be banned?
Probably not. I think we're overarching with our CDC.
A British Prime Minister told me. This is a true story.
Is this what we're going to talk about?
No.
We're all the way here in London and we want to talk about little chocolate eggs, really?
Actually, the relevance is this. A British Prime Minister told me recently that he was stopped at LAX airport and he had his Kinder Surprise chocolate eggs confiscated because they were a danger to children. And yet the number one killer of children now in America is guns. And yet America will not regulate guns like they regulate chocolate eggs.
The number one killer,
and I simply ask, why?
The number one killer of young people, and I call young people 20 and younger, is fentanyl. And it's pouring across our southern border, and no one seems to give a damn.
That's not true. The number one killer is guns.
No, number one killer is fentanyl of our young
Number
people.
one killer of children is guns.
Well, we can disagree on that.
Well, it's not. It's a fact. It's not.
Okay. Well, I'm
It's a
worried.
fact.
I'm worried as a mother about the fentanyl killing.
But you not find that extraordinary?
I think it's ridiculous.
That a Kinder Surprise chocolate egg is banned in America
This
because it
shows
may
you
choke kids.
how out of touch these government agencies like the CDC and the ATF are. They're completely out of touch. They're wasting their time on that. Meanwhile, they're imposing mask guidelines and forcing our beautiful children to have masks on their face. That's how out of touch the CDC is. We need to take away the CDC's power. They're out of touch. They're completely out of touch.
You want to regulate the CDC?
I want to take away their power. They are an agency. They have no power over us, and they're trying to impose power.
But just finally on guns, you wouldn't want to implement any of these things which 80% of
what I
people
want to
polled
do
by
with
Fox
our
News would
guns
do.
is protect our Second Amendment at all costs.
And you wouldn't bring in any new regulations at all?
I don't see new regulations coming in now. They're unconstitutional. Pierce, even if somebody in Congress wanted to...
Where does it say in the Constitution
wait.
you can't bring in new regulations?
shall not be infringed. Our
Right.
Second Amendment shall not be
But that
infringed.
means you can't ever change it at all?
Listen.
It's already an
try.
amendment.
You can try if you want, but good luck, because it's a Second Amendment. It's enshrined in our Constitution. It's a God-given right, and we're not going to give it up.
But how do you stop the mass shootings if you never do anything to stop them?
This is how you stop them. We start to address mental illness. We're not addressing that. Our children are under a lot of stress right now. The world is a dangerous place. Our children are feeling distress. They're going to school. They're being psychologically abused in school with indoctrination. We're also seeing all kinds of violence on the streets. Our children are feeling that as well. COVID was difficult for our children. Our young people are suffering. And instead of going after and discussing mental illness and trying to find some answers to that, we push big pharma on them, and we
have the same...
No. We give them too many meds.
Here's my answer to you.
You can't talk about big pharma, just like you can't talk about the military-industrial complex, because they control the media.
Kari, nobody controls me.
You cannot talk about big pharma.
Famously, nobody controls me.
You cannot, no. You can't talk about big pharma right now. You can't talk about how dangerous the vaccines are. You can't talk about how dangerous
I don't think the vaccines were dangerous.
Really?
No.
You're not seeing some of the consequences?
No, I think the
this?
vaccines actually were remarkably safe, saved millions of lives.
Wow.
And actually, they had the same amount of side effects.
I understand. Your network is
we don't
getting
agree. We don't agree.
millions of dollars in advertising.
Nobody's told me at Fox to
No.
say this. I disagree with Fox about a number of things.
I worked in media for 30 years. I get you have to protect the sponsor, and the sponsor is
Who
Big
am I
Pharma.
protecting?
The sponsor's Big Pharma.
I happen to believe the vaccines were comparatively safe to other vaccines. I think, like all vaccines, they have side effects. But a lot of the stuff talked about the side effects and the supposed millions of people dying and so is complete nonsense.
Okay.
I believe. Well, we can disagree.
Okay.
Let's talk about something we could probably agree on. Is Joe Biden too old to be running for president?
I don't think age is a factor, just as I don't think you're too old to be a news anchor.
Thank you. I wasn't aware this was a talking point.
What it is more is a mental state and a cognitive ability. And I think that we knew going into this that cognitively he wasn't prepared. And more horrifying than his cognitive ability is his ethics. He's unethical. He's taken payouts from the CCP. He's taken money from Ukraine. He's, in my opinion, acted in a criminal manner against the people of America. He's supposed to be protecting our citizens. He's supposed to be representing America. And he's shown more allegiance toward the CCP and Ukraine. It has nothing to do with his age. My father was a very sound mind right up until his death. You could not say he had one slip in cognitive ability. But Joe Biden cognitively is not prepared for what he has coming at him. And more importantly, I think he's got blood on his hands with the way he's handled
So who should take him on?
Border
From the
situation.
Republicans, Kari, who should take him on? Who's got the best chance of beating him?
Of course, you know the answer to that.
We think it's Donald Trump.
Donald J. Trump.
But I would argue, genuinely, and I've known Trump a long time, as you know, I would argue he might be the only way the Democrats win the next
That's
election.
complete baloney. It's hogwash.
Like we did last time.
It's hogwash.
They've beaten him once.
It's hogwash. Really, nobody in America believes that election was fair. Joe
I do.
Biden didn't win 80.
Hang on.
You're not in America. Let me remind you.
Hang on. I do believe that, but not only, never mind me, so do a lot of senior Republicans.
Okay.
Well, they do.
81 million votes is impossible. Joe Biden didn't garner 81 million votes.
He did. It was a free and fair election, and he won.
Well, you can say that a million times. It doesn't make it true.
Well, it's like your election in Arizona. Same thing.
Do you really want to argue about the elections? I'm happy to.
Only that you and Trump both refuse to accept the result of democratic elections. And I say to you, in all sincerity, I think it's a vote losing premise.
That's fine.
To keep saying I didn't lose when you did, you're better off going,
Piers,
I lost that time, next time I'm going to win.
Piers, I totally understand that. I understand what you're saying. And I would just ask this. When you voted, when was the last time you voted?
Here?
Yes.
In the last election.
Okay, so you voted. If you'd have shown up and they said you're going to wait 5 hours and 61% of the polling locations had non-functioning equipment, you waited 5 hours, you showed up to vote, and the tabulator refused your ballot, and they said, you know what, go down the road, drive 20.
You have to prove
Would you
this.
be okay with that?
You have to prove all this.
We have proven
You
it.
haven't proven it.
We have proven it.
You haven't. It's been independently established. You haven't proven these allegations.
I wish you were there.
You say you were robbed. Trump says he was robbed. I've looked Trump in the face, and I've liked Donald personally a long time. But I said to him, I don't know why you keep saying you won the 2020. Nobody wants to go back. Look forward. Offer America a positive future. Give them a reason to vote for you next time. Stop banging on about 2020.
The reason
and to you,
that
I say you're a rising. Look, you're great on TV. You're very personable. You're very confident. You had a little setback when you lost. Why don't you just say, you know what? All the greats lose. All the great sports people talk about the power of losing and then winning again and coming back. Why not take that position rather than saying, you know what? I'm just not going to accept it. I'm going to take my toys and run off home, and you're not going to play with them anymore.
I'm sorry that's how you see it. I am sorry
you know what I
see
mean?
It that way. I'm sorry you see it that way. The way that I see it and what I'm fighting for are the people of Arizona. And their vote was taken from them. We have corrupt
You have to prove it, Kari.
May I speak?
You may.
We have corrupt election officials. We have corrupt elections. They printed the wrong image on the ballot on election day.
Why has it not been established independently?
It has been. And the Maricopa County has not rebutted that. They haven't. They have not denied that. And so I encourage you to take a look at our case.
Do you want to be senator in Arizona?
I'd love you to go to my Rumble page and take a look at our court case and see how it played out.
I've
you
followed
obviously
it.
didn't watch the whole thing.
Okay, let me ask you.
You've scratched a little bit of the surface to act like you're aware of what's happening, but you're
No, I just think that, like Donald Trump, you've got to produce the hard evidence, or you've got to stop claiming
what we've got
you
to
were
do,
robbed of the
Piers,
election.
What we've got to do is fight for fair elections so that every voter, I don't care if they're the most
America has some of the fairest elections in the world.
That's completely
You do. Your system is incredibly
We vote
fair.
for 28 days in Arizona. We count for 14 days. That's ripe for fraud.
Do you want to be senator of
I
Arizona?
want to see
Let me
fair
ask you.
and
Come
free
on.
elections.
Answer my question. Do you want to be the senator?
I'm not sure what my future holds, to be honest. I'm working right now on our election case. That's the center of my
Would you like to be
right
senator of Arizona?
And if for some reason we don't get a fair outcome in our election, I will run for Senate, most likely.
You will?
Most likely.
So you're declaring now?
No, I'm saying most likely if we don't have a fair outcome in our election case that I may consider running for Senate.
And if
Because
Donald Trump says to you, wants you to be his running mate, what do you say?
We've had this conversation.
Come on.
I said, if the royal family invites you in and they want you to come in.
I said yes.
You said yes. Good for you. Good for you.
Would
you
you
know
do it though?
I don't think President Trump needs a vice president. He's that powerful
Well, he's
as
going to have
leader.
it if he runs.
He's that powerful as a leader. He doesn't really need one. But I do hope he picks somebody who the media fears more than they fear him.
Is that you?
And you know why I think he should do that? Because then they'll stop trying to take him down. He's the one man fighting for us in America. You may not see it here across the pond, as they say. He's the one man who's been fighting for us, and they have been gunning for him since day one. The media's been lying about him since day one with bogus, phony, BS stories And now they're doing a bunch of bogus, phony cases against him. And the American people are onto it. They recognize he's the one man that's standing in that gap to protect the people of America.
I don't think they're bogus.
And
stories.
I love, you know what, frankly,
I thought the Stormy Daniels indictment was a stupid thing to go after him about. I think an ex-president paying hush money to a porn star to cover up an affair is not a serious enough thing for him to be indicted over. However, I do think some of the other legal issues he's in are really serious, potentially.
I think what it does is it allows you to say what you just said. Keep this in the media. We'll keep it in the media. We can talk about porn stars.
I don't have a dog in the race.
We can talk about E. Jean, whatever. We can talk about all this stuff, and it keeps it out there as a reminder to people, little brainworms going into people's heads to try to turn them against Trump. They're not going to be turned against Trump because the people of America know he's fighting for us. The people who hate Trump, the globalists, he's got the right kind of enemies.
Sounds like you're making a little campaign ad to the
right,
president to be his running mate.
He's got the right kind of enemies, and I'm fighting for him. You know why I'm fighting for him? You know why I'm out here speaking for him? Has nothing to do with me. I want nothing. I want nothing in return.
Have you practiced your first vice president speech?
I want nothing in return for me speaking up for him other than I want my country back. I want my children to live in an America where we have our freedoms and our liberties intact. And we're this close to losing that. And it scares the hell out of me as a mother. I'm just a mom. I'm truly a citizen who decided to step forward and run for office. And I've been attacked by the media. I sit down, I get hostile interviews, and I take every little bit of it.
This is not a hostile interview.
No, this is actually a little more polite. You've got the British polite.
Thank you.
Which is great. But I don't care what people call me. I care about my country, and we're on the verge of losing it. And I would hope that here in Britain, if you guys are facing the same fate, that you would be standing up for your country.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love people to stand up for their country. Kari, it's great to meet you in my country.
Likewise.
Thank you for coming in.
It's wonderful here.
I'll be watching what happens with you with great interest.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Here's a Kinder Egg. You
you
can't have them back home because they might be harmful to children. Good to see you.